started, where they came from. For those of you that don't know me, my name is TJ Bailey. I've been in this club since 2002, 2003, so right around 15, 16 years. Was in a club previously before that, also based in Rochester, which was called Rochesterbassmasters, and I was in that from '96 until right about the end in 2002, 2003. Pretty much the only member in this club that knows my whole story is Dominic Sarasolo, because him and my father are best friends. So he's known me since I could walk. He every fishing trip that we took, he was with us, so he knows how I started and where I went and all that kind of stuff. So, no, I've never been there. Never had the bracelets on, but, there's always time. But anyway, when I was young, I was very fortunate that my father fished. And when we were young, or when I was young in the early 80s, mid 80s, the thing to do was trout salmon fishing on Lake Ontario. My dad had a big boat. We trolled, did all that kind of stuff, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it because it was boring. You just sit there and wait for a rod to pop, and I couldn't stand it. In the late 80s, early 90s, when Lake Ontario basically died, the whole trout salmon population basically depleted. The state wasn't putting any money into it. There were charter captains going in and out, and all of a sudden, started hearing more and more about these bass tournaments. Guys, see all these bass boats and stuff. And we had a 12, 14-foot aluminum boat that we would go to Braddock's and around the Coit, and you see these guys in these bass boats come in 90 miles an hour, and I thought that was just like the coolest thing in the world. They'd come up 900 miles an hour, stop, fish a couple spots, and then they go, and I'm like, man, that's cool. You see that? And so
he's probably Ray.
It wasn't Ray. Not that bad.
So when the lake died, my dad tried to sell his boat and buy a bass boat, and couldn't sell it because nobody was doing that. Nobody was getting into that lake fishing anymore. So if anybody knows my father, he's my hero. He's one of the best mechanics that I know. He's taught me pretty much everything that I know about mechanical stuff, machining, all that kind of stuff. So basically is MacGyver. And
too many boats.
So my father is also the cheapest guy you'll ever know in your life, and could never justify at that time in 90, 91, couldn't justify that $20,000 for a brand new Ranger, and that was like the 70, 80,000 today. And so what we did is stripped the whole boat, sold the 350 Chevy that was in it, the Volvo outdrive, all the downriggers, the electronics, the rod holders, the rods, the reels, everything. And my uncle owns a drywall business, an acoustical business, set up a laser in the garage, beamed a laser all the way around it, and we cut this boat down all the way around. Welded up the hole, it was aluminum, welded up the hole, cut a transom on it, stuck an outboard on it, and we built a bass boat on it. And we fished tournaments all over the state in this boat. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Everybody knew it. And if you ever seen the boat, it was black, and it said fabricator on the side. My old man and me, we built this boat. We were proud of it. And it was a Mirocraft. It was a 21-foot Mirocraft, the Cuddy. And so you kind of progress in and out, and we always fish either it was Braddock's or Rondequoit or going to Canisius or Sodas, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved fishing for bass, and my thing was I seen all these boats, and we'd go out fishing, and I'd see these guys come in for tournaments, and I'm like, man, I want to do that. So my dad got into a club, this Rochesterbassmasters, and I had to be 16. They wouldn't let me in. They wouldn't let me fish. I was like 13 or 14. They wouldn't let me fish. So I had to wait till I was 16, and my dad had to sign consent and all that kind of stuff, and there it was. I thought, don't get me wrong, I thought my shit didn't stink. I thought I could go out and catch them just like all these guys, because it was so easy when you were out fun fishing. I'll go out and clean these guys' clock and take all their money. Well, it didn't happen like that. So But I was young. I was young. I was impressionable. There was a lot of growing pains and stuff that had to go on between there. So when I was 17 years old, I said I didn't want to do this non-boater stuff anymore. I wanted a boat. And I bothered my dad. And to tell you, I wasn't a spoiled kid when I was younger. I didn't have four-wheelers and dirt bikes and video games and all that kind of stuff. But when it came to fishing, I had a silver spoon in my mouth. If I wanted something and it had to do with fishing, my dad got it for me. And that's probably why my dad's my hero, is because when I wanted something that had to do with fishing, I got it. And that's the way, when I think about it today, if my kids, my two boys, get into fishing and they're as hardcore at it as I am, I will be the same way. You want that? I'm going to get it. Oh yeah, here we go. If that keeps your mind off of everything else that's going on in this world and keeps your mind on that kid's got it. No problem. No questions asked. So anyway, I wanted a boat. I really wanted a boat. And I looked 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 and, I was 16, 17, almost 18. And who's got that kind of money? I didn't know I didn't have money. I remember when I was a kid, I'd be in the backyard practicing casting with a bait caster, and I tried to get it down to where I wouldn't backlash the reel, and I'd go through spool after spool after spool after spool. And one day I'm in the backyard and I'm practicing casting, and here comes this boat, and I live right next door to he's like my brother. It's one of the Bronco families. It's a nephew of Kenny Bronco. So I'm sitting there and I'm casting. I see this pickup truck come in with this brand new, and it was in 95 or something, brand new Ranger, black and teal, freaking gorgeous. This thing was beautiful. I'm like, oh my God, this boat's gorgeous, blah blah blah. And back at the time, that was the boat to have, because it was still, the regulation was 150. We didn't have the 250 at that time. So that was the boat to have, was that 482 VS. And it was a gorgeous boat. And I'm like, man, that had to be like $1 million. And it was like 24,000, 25,000. We're like, if we could get that now, that'd be something else. But that's what I wanted. So finally, I got a boat. I was 17 years old and I got a boat. It was trashed, but I got a boat. And with the help of my father, I fixed the whole thing up. We painted it. I put carpet in it. I put a deck extension in it. I put trolling motor on it, graphs on it, everything. I was ready to go. Ready to go out there and fish. And let me tell you what, from when I graduated high school, because that's when my dad said I could use that boat, is after I graduated high school. He would not let me use it after that. So when I graduated high school, he let me use it, and it was the day after my graduation was the first points tournament of the Bullseye season, and I got to use it. And I was jazzed up. I was ready to go. I zeroed.
Been there.
I zeroed. Dude, let me tell you what, I talked so much shit that I was going to freaking kill everybody, because I got a boat now, and I don't have to deal with this guy taking me over there, and there's no fish over there. I zeroed.
What lake was that?
It was on Canisius. It was on Canisius. It's probably not one of my favorite lakes, but, I nowadays I'm halfway decent there. But I zeroed. And my old man comes up to me and he goes, "How'd you do?" And I said, "I don't know what I'm talking about." And I think he had one turn. And I'm like, motherfucker. I'm like, you couldn't help me or nothing? Tell me, do this or that? And he's like, "For what? You're my competition now." So I'm like, and my dad back in the day, he was a stick. He won a bunch of tournaments, and he was always making 6-man teams and stuff like that. And he was somebody that I looked up to. He was somebody that other people looked up to, because he was consistent. He was always up in that top 5. He was always up there, and he had always told me, and I had told a lot, not of you, but club members in general, you don't ever have to win tournaments. Yeah, it's cool to win. You want to win. But if you're consistent, coming in with 5 fish, you'll be at the top by the end of the year. No matter what those 5 fish weigh, if you come in with 5, no matter the size, you'll be towards the top by the end of the year, because consistency pays. And after being consistent, you will get a win. It will happen. It will happen. And I'm a firm believer in that because of that day. Because then I started to look at it in a different light. And I started to go out and practice a little bit. Get more familiar with it. And did a little bit better. And did a little bit better. And then girls kind of got me sidetracked for a year or two, and the boat kind of sad. Whatever. But, you know, it's neither here nor there. But I started fishing a lot when I was 20, 21. Started fishing federation tournaments and stuff like that. Made 6-man teams through Bullseye. And I liked that because we were traveling outside of where we were here, and I got to see different bodies of water, Champlain, the Hudson, the Mohawk River, Chautauqua. I got to see all these different bodies of water and how they fished and how they were different from what was around here, and I liked it. And started doing that more. And got my clock cleaned while fishing the Federation. Because back then, in 2002, 2003, dude, there was... If you think there's sticks like here, back then, the whole Fed was absolutely full of sticks. Now, these guys were... This is back when the Federation lined up with the BFL schedule. The BFL's fished Saturday, and the Fed was on Sunday. These guys, no matter where it was, it could have been up in the islands. There was a BFL on Saturday. These guys would drive all night long to get to Champlain just to fish that tournament on Sunday. You know, guys like Ricky Doyle that lives up in Champlain. You had Chris Loftus he was a friggin' phenom. You know, he was in this club for a long time, but this guy, he didn't even have to practice. He knew where to go. And it didn't even matter what lake we were on. We could have been on the Hudson, and he knew that. Or it was first tournament of the year on George. I don't know how many times year after year he won that tournament. And the guys are like, how is he doing this? And it was like mind blowing. And Matt Spar, member of this club for a long, long time, was getting into it. And this kid was like, he was on another level. And you also had Lou Rosati and guys that, you know, that I looked up to. And I'm like, man, how are these guys doing it? How are these guys doing it? So after a while, I started taking a step back and be like, what do I got to do to get better? And then I said, you know, it's just like any sport. You know, you got basketball, football, baseball. You don't get any better in anything unless you compete against people that will kick your face in the dirt, because that's just going to push you even harder to be better. And I wanted to be better. So what I did is I started fishing all these regional areas with guys that I knew that were better than me. And what it did is it actually pushed me to be better. And then I joined this club. And this was back in the time when, you know, we had Mark Harold was putting in massive amounts of time. Lou Rosati was putting in massive amounts of time. And you knew they were doing that, so it pushed you to be that much better and go out and do it, because you weren't going to win, because they had it all dialed in. When that tournament got started, they were going to catch it. No matter what, they were going to catch it. And so I started doing that. I started practicing more, doing more research. And it was starting to pay off little by little by little by little. You know, I started winning. And it felt better, but it really didn't suffice. And then, I don't know, probably 2006, 2007 is when the whole side imaging craze, that whole technological phase kind of came in, and I was like intrigued. I'm like, what is this new technology I needed? I have to have it. And this was right when Jim Bianchi joined the club. So I got him talked into it, and you know him. He's like a salesman's dream. He'll buy anything you tell him about it. So we all bought it, and we were like, our eyes were just like, what is going on here? This is like the best thing since sliced bread. We can see everything now, blah, blah, blah. And that's when it kind of took it to another level for me as being a electronics guy. I could go out and I could literally find stuff with my electronics and have confidence that I could go catch them. And it worked. It really worked. It wasn't a particular technique. It was learning how to use the tools that were out there and being successful with it. And I was real successful with it. Because this was coming from days that I would go, fish an open tournament on Canisius Lake, and I'd be sitting there, and if it was a York tournament or back in the day, I don't even remember, or an Avon or whatever, and I'd be in the parking lot, and you'd see Todd Cole and Vinnie Brock come in, and they were the biggest lake sticks that ever lived, and you had Roy Goodwin come driving in, and Craig Kettlecamp, and there's these like, oh my God, are you kidding me? I'm like, wow, I just donated my money to all this stuff, and by that time it wasn't like that anymore, because the lakes were changing, everything was changing, and that flip and bite was becoming non-existent. It was becoming more of a finesse-y type thing, and knowing how to read your electronics and find offshore stuff, and I excelled at it. And probably my biggest downfall is I help too many people. That's probably what my biggest downfall is I help too many people. I put faith into people that they're going to do good by me showing them something, and I can tell you this right now is just be prepared on who you're around and who you share your information with, because it could help you and it could hurt you. And so the progression of that led me into getting back into the Federation and doing well. In 2012, I made my first divisional team, and I'd always wanted to do that because that was like the goal. If you fished the Fed, that was the goal, was to make the division. So you had the shot to get the Nationals, to possibly have a chance to get the Classic. And I made it in 2012. I did. I ended up in 5th place. I screwed up. I probably should have been Angler of the Year that year. I was in 2nd going into the last tournament, and I screwed it all up. I zigged when I should have zagged, and I threw left when I should have threw right, and it just went all apart. But I kept it together enough, I guess, to make the team. And I was so grateful to make that team because it was the first one, and a guy on the team that I have huge amounts of respect for, that's in the Syracuse area, which is Joe Matt. He told me something that I will never forget, and it makes me feel good to hear that. He goes, you know how I measure a Federation guy's ability to say? And I said, no. He goes, how many divisional teams they've made? Because anybody can make it once. Anybody can get lucky. But if you make it multiple times, you're stick. Because it ain't the easiest thing in the world to make one of these teams. It's not. It's just not. Because there's only 3 tournaments, and you can't fall. You just cannot fall, because there's no way you're going to pick yourself back up. And when
drops.
There's nothing. No, there's no drops. It's all on a point and weight basis. And if you stumble, these guys are going to kick your face in the dirt. They just are, because they're that good. And
TJ Sheriff, Joe Matt has made 14 divisional teams.
He's made 14 divisional teams. He's made 4 national championships. The guy's, he's been there, done that. When Chris Loftus made the Classic in 2008, Joe Matt actually went with him down for pre-practice because Chris Loftus said, I wanted to bring someone with me that pushed me to get me to this point. He goes, and Joe was the guy. So if I can't fish against him in this event, I want him with me while I'm practicing.
Joe Matt's from Jones, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And Chris, yep. I believe that tournament was Hartwell, right?
Yes. So I made it in 2012, and I was so jacked up to go because I couldn't wait, and they put us on this piece of crap fishery in Boston, this Mystic Charles River, and I don't know how they came up with that. They said there was decent fish in this place. They were lying. When you put whatever we had like 70, 80 boats. I'm talking a river that's no wider than the canal. That's 5 miles an hour. Can't get on plane. And to get to the Charles River, you had to go through basically salt water in the Bay of Boston and go to the Charles River. And it was just, I tried to put all that out of my mind and say, I'm still here for one reason, and that was to get that spot. Because I wasn't fishing the tournament, and you don't go into fishing that tournament to win the whole thing. If that comes, that's a bonus. You're going in that tournament to beat the other 11 guys on your team. You're fishing an 11 boat tournament. That's it. Take the other guys and get them out of your head, because it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter to you. You want to be the top guy in New York at the end of those 3 days. And at that time, we all fished all 3 days. There was no cut. There was nothing. And the first day, I think I had 2 fish for like 2.5 pounds. Second day I zeroed, and the third day I zeroed. And you know what won New York? 10 pounds.
3 days.
3 days.
How much?
10 pounds.
10 pounds.
For 3 days. The guy that won the tournament had like 14 3/4. And that was Jonathan Carter.
You didn't fish dead bodies in the shopping carts.
Oh, there was shopping carts in the water. There was TVs. There was pizza boxes. You name it, that trash was in the water. Like, I flipped next to a TV during practice, and I caught a fish. No lie. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible.
Real junk. Is that called junk fishing?
Yeah, it's real junk.
Yeah. But after that event, I tried even harder to get back to another divisional. Didn't happen the following year. It happened the year after that. And
First regional, right?
No, it was in Hartford on the Connecticut River, the one that Casey Smith actually took, and he made it to nationals. Hats off to him, he put time in, and he actually, put together something to win off of. I didn't find nothing. That place was freaking horrible. But other than that, I still have that burning desire to get back. I qualified again this year to go down to Winya, and I turned it down. The only reason why I turned it down is because Georgetown, South Carolina is like 14.5 hours away. And I got 2 other little things to think about, and that's 2 little boys that, want dad around, want me to take them fishing, and that's more important to me than going down there. If it was somewhere close, like last year we were on the Chesapeake, which was awesome. The fishery is like reborn again, because the fishing was just. If we had more time to dial that place in, I think. The guys that knew the place, they blew it out of the water. They were catching 20 plus a day. But when you take a guy from, upstate New York that doesn't see tidal a lot, it takes them a little bit to, understand it and that too. And figure out why these fish do the things that they do at certain times of the day. And we don't see that kind of stuff because Canisius Lake doesn't fluctuate 4 hours every day. 2 feet. Sodus Bay doesn't fluctuate 2 feet 4 hours every day. No, they don't. So you don't know what happens, and it's. I can tell you this. If you ever get the chance to go fish tidal water, go do it. Go do it, because the experience you will gain by just fishing it is like eye-opening. How these bass are just totally reliant on moving water. On how water moves. When that water moves, how they get positioned in certain areas, because they know that they don't have to move and the food's coming to them. Just like you guys flipping grass, they know that they don't have to move because the food's coming by them. Or bluegill are swimming by them. They don't have to move. And it's if it doesn't make you a better fisherman because you understand it more, I don't know what will.
Does that tide thing happen the same time every day?
No, it progresses an hour every day.
So today.
So if low tide is at 6 o'clock today, it will be at 7 o'clock tomorrow. It will progress an hour every day.
But is it only once a day?
No, it goes out and then it comes in.
High tide or low tide?
Every 4 hours.
Okay.
Depending on where you are, it might be a little bit long. And the draw is a little bit different. Like Potomac, Chesapeake is right around like 2.5 feet, the differential that will drop and come up. The Hudson, 6.
I was in
6.
Canada now in February, and you don't really notice it. We were in Portland, Maine last summer, and it's 10 feet.
Yeah.
Just to give you the kind of difference between north and south, how far you go.
6. I'll share a story with you. Fishing in the Federation years ago, probably like 2000, 2001. And I used to run with 2 or 3 guys, and we had a points tournament on the Hudson out of Kingston. So we're running all over the place and trying to figure this stupid tidal fishery out, and they say it's supposed to, oh, Hudson's so good, just go fish the chestnuts, you'll catch the hell out of them. Yeah, your ass. You're out of your mind. So we go up this little creek. There's a golf course in the back. You got to go through this, under a bridge kind of deal. We go under the bridge, and there's, 3 boats back there. Me and 2 of my buddies. And we're fishing, and none of us paying freaking attention. All of a sudden I look, and I'm like, huh, ain't getting out of there. The water's up. It's 8 o'clock at night. Midnight, we got out of there. About 11:30ish is when we just made it enough. I had to pull the cowling off my engine, and enough seats out, and I could just make it under.
How far up the Hudson does it tide go?
All the way to Troy.
All the way up?
All the way
All the way
to
to
the
Troy.
lines.
All the way to Troy. But it was, we were still green back then. We didn't care. We were like, screw it. But the worst part about it was the next day was the tournament. And it was like 1 o'clock before we got there. And, it was back in the day and we were like, screw it. We'll just stay up and we'll fish the tournament. Yeah, that was the wrong thing to do. Don't ever do that, because it wasn't, it just wasn't meant to be. I think we left early on that one. But a lot of my success tournament fishing comes from the knowledge that I got from my dad taking me out. A few key people, Lou Rosati being one of them. He's probably one of my best friends, and the guy he's one of the best fishermen I know. He can see fish like no other. Like, we were fishing this fall, and we're in like 20 foot of water. It's crystal clear. It's on Cuca Lake. You can see the bottom. He sees this school of smallmouth running the bank. I couldn't see him. I got perfect vision. Couldn't freaking see him. He's like, oh my God, there's a 5-pounder, there's a 4-pounder, there's another 5-pounder. I'm like, what the hell are you looking at? I can't see nothing. And he's probably one of the best sight fishermen I've ever known, and Bob can attest to that. Tom can attest to that, because he's we call him Eagle Eyes, because he says, oh, not anymore, I'm too old to do that. You're ass. But there's a bunch of guys. Vinny Brock, he's one of my good friends. He taught me a lot about fishing grass, on how to dissect it and how to read it. And you guys look at me with stalled looks in your face and be like, what are you talking about reading it? Don't you just get in there and flip it? No. If you have ever fished with me, and Terry Linden can attest to this, that and Fred can do the same because he was with me also, is if I pull up to fish a spot, there's a reason why I'm coming up to fish a spot. It's because there's an irregularity somewhere. And I think I did it with Fred. I pulled up into a spot, and all you could see is just grass everywhere. And we had a 25, 30 mile an hour wind blowing all over the place. And he's trying to figure out how I'm throwing a drop shot in a 30 mile an hour wind and feeling anything and catching fish while doing it. Because I knew what I was looking at. I knew that there was a hole in the grass, and I knew exactly where it was. And I knew as soon as my bait got to it, I was going to get bit every single time. And Mark Harold was right in front of me, and he didn't know how I was doing it either. It's because of the little intricacies of that style of fishing, whether it's a turn, a bend, a horseshoe, an edge that makes like a defined wall of grass. That's the difference between winning and just fishing. Because when you understand that kind of stuff, and understand when, Tom talked about different types of aquatic vegetation. Well, when those two collide and you get milfoil and coontail together, you better start getting excited because stuff's about to happen. And once you understand that kind of stuff, it will be eye-opening to you, because it won't be just going down this weed line, throwing a Senko, and dragging it back. You'll be pulling up to a certain section to fish it, and then you're on to the next one, not just taking it all the way down. Because you know the probability of a fish being there. You'll know the high percentage area. And that's what I do. If I had to put it in a nutshell, what I do is I just fish high percentage areas that I know where fish are going to be. I'm not just milling around and wasting time. Nope.
A lot of practice, a lot of time on the water.
Nope. But it all changes. Grass fishing changes because it all comes up different every year. It doesn't grow the same. Take for instance Cayuga Lake. We didn't have any grass in it this year. It was all junk. It was all garbage. Fish gotta go somewhere. They're gonna go somewhere. You gotta find them. So that history that you knew, take all that, throw it out of the way. It's a brand new lake. Go start over again. Well, that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. If advice that I can give to guys is don't fish history. Don't fish history. Because history will bite you in your ass. It will. 9 times out of 10, it will. Fish seasonal places. Fish do certain things at certain times every single year. Starting from when you guys fish the first tournament of the year. If you go out in the spring and you're fishing and you see beds all over the place, fish don't all spawn at the same time. They come in waves. Depending on the moon phase, where it's at in relation to temperature and all this other kind of stuff, pay attention to that kind of stuff. I think, where were we? I think 3 years ago we started off at like Canisius or something, and Pat Carr beat me with like 19 pounds or something like that, and I had 17 or close to 18. And he said he caught them all under a dock. And I looked at his fish and I'm like, dude, those are bedfish. No, I caught them under a dock. I'm like, dude, they're bedfish. Look at their tails. They're gone. They're gone. They're all red, bloody. There's blood coming out of them. Like, those are bedfish. And he's like, no. Yeah, dude. Yeah. But I guarantee he will always remember that. He will always remember that. Always first tournament of the year, you have to look for that kind of stuff and then watch for it to progress as the season goes on. As the season goes on, they're going to do different things. They're going to get out in different areas of the lake where the grass is. If it's largemouth, smallmouth do asinine things all year long. And it's depending on lake, time of year, where they are. It's all different. But I try to fish as much as I can now. Having 2 boys, that kind of puts the kibosh on that. But I still do my fair share. But I will say this. I do try to fish at least 1 or 2 tournaments here every year because I never forgot where I came from. I came from here. I came from the club guys. I am just like you. I am still a club guy no matter what. I never forgot where I came from. And I'll probably fish a couple, but I do it not to take your money and
Sure.
No, seriously,
No,
I'm dead serious. Because you know what? If that was true, that last tournament on Oneida, I wouldn't even have showed up. But I just wanted to fish so bad, as I didn't care that I was in the back of Matt James' boat. I had an awesome time. We laughed and bullshitted, and it was a great time. And everybody's like, where's your boat? And I'm like, it's at home in the garage, where it should be. I'm like, I'm just coming out to have a good time. And to be honest with you, that should speak to my character. That means nothing to me. I can get in the back of anybody's boat and have a good time and catch fish. I might be able to learn something from him, and he might be able to learn something from me, and that's a win-win day. But all in all, I never forgot where I came from, and I came from the Rochesterbassmasters. I will always be a member of this club because of, the people that are here. And it's a great stepping stone. Yes, I have different goals. My goal, I can tell you this, my goal is to make a national. That's all I want to do is I want to make a national. And if it leads to having the possibility to make a classic, if it presents itself, hey, but I have no desire to go fish professionally. That has been long gone. I got a great friend of mine, Jamie Hartman, that is competing in the Bassmasters Classic this year. If you want his phone number, you can call him and ask him how life on the road is, because he will tell you, well, if you like to drive, it's for you. Because it sucks. You got to be here. You got to be at this obligation. You got to be at this one. You got to go to practice this lake. And thank God he's not married, doesn't have any kids, doesn't have a house or anything like that. Because
he sold his house and all his belongings to be able to do this, right?
He's got a new girlfriend though. I saw it on the dinner.
I did see that too.
It's just a friend. It's just a friend.
She loves the fish too.
Yeah. And but like I said, I don't have any desire to do it professionally. I'm not good enough to do it professionally. Would I be tempted? Yeah, I think everybody's tempted. But you know what? I'm a realist. I know what I can do and what I can't do, and I don't want to do that. That's not for me. The only thing that I have a burning inside me to do is to fish the state, keep making, because I know the probability if you keep making regional teams, you're going to be close to making a national. If you keep your face in there, it's going to happen. And the other thing that I always wanted to do, and I told my dad, before I die, I just want to fish one. I just want to fish one to say that I did it, because I want to fish an open. Just to say that I did it, because my family doesn't have huge amounts of money and stuff like that. So one of these days, I'm going to fish one of those things just to tell my kids, yeah, I fished one of them before. I've done it. I've fished against them guys. And just something that I can tell my grandkids about or whatever you want to call it. But other than that, I have no desire to do it professionally. I love this area. I love the people in this area. I like seeing new faces come around like Kyle. He's the future, and Dan Palazzo's kid. He's the future. You could groom that kid right there. That's the future. I'm not Ray's age, but I consider myself.
Thank God.
I'm an older guy. I've been in this game 20 years.
I got underwear older than you.
I've been around. I've seen this. I've seen this whole sport progress and do different things. But the other thing that I will tell you is, if you want to compete, even at this level, you got to be able to adapt. You got to be able to try different things, new techniques and stuff coming out. You got to learn how to do it. As much as say, I don't want to do it, you're going to get steamrolled because other guys are going to do it. And it's going to be fish catching stuff. Like, I'll tell you one lure that I said was absolute bullshit, and it will never catch a damn fish. It's a whopper plopper. I said, that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life.
It doesn't work, don't
And
throw
do you know how many hundreds of dollars of whopper ploppers I have today? It's unbelievable. Those things are like unbelievable. That is literally a tube of crack coming through the water. It literally is.
With a whopper pop, right?
It's just a big, it's a big spook-looking bait, and the back part is a boot tail that spins around. It's like a big oscillating, like a helicopter lure coming around. That's what it looks like.
Remember that?
Oh yeah, I had all that crap too. But I'll tell you what, I said it for years, and I'll tell you this too, is when it came out, I think 2000, 2001, when the Senko came out. Now my dad, mind you, he was a huge shallow dock guy, and one of his good friends, ex-member of this club that passed away a long time ago, Vic Ritchie, huge wacky worm guy. Creme scoundrel worm with a drywall nail stuffed in the nose. And that was his Senko. That's what they used on docks, wood, shallow, anything. This Senko comes out. we seen these things, and I'm like, that is the stupidest thing in the world. I will never buy a pack of those, and I swear to God, I have probably put Gary Yamamoto's kids through college 4 times.
Oh, great.
You know, and every one of you, there's not a guy in this room that does not own a bag of Senkos.
How about
Because
52 bags of
they
Senkos?
work. They work. They will always work. There will not be a time that they don't work. But that's
just the 6 or the 5-inch.
But those are the things. Those are the things. If I didn't jump on that, there's guys still catching them today, like massacring them on that stupid thing.
Why do you think the drop shot has been so such because of pressure on the legs?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like fishing virtually.
Sure. Well, 10 years ago, the predominant way of fishing around, the Rochester area, Monroe County, surrounding counties, was flipping. Still is to a point. Was flipping. Whether it was a jig, plastic, that was when you guys seen people that brought in 20-pound bags 8 to 10 years ago, like big, solid bags. That's what it was. Guys were flipping grass, whether it was shallow, deep, whatever. It was either on a jig or plastic. That's what it was. And then there's so many guys that there's just a huge influx of guys that are getting into the sport that they just keep seeing it over and over and over and over. They get pressure to it. They get conditioned to it. So you got to throw them something that is slower, more finessey, that kind of thing. So
and to your point though, at the national meetings last November, the Georgia regional team for this year has 6 high school kids on it, and the adults are livid. I mean, they belong to high school clubs, and then they join the adult club too, and they've got on the regional team. 1/3 of their regional team is high school kids. So I was talking to the youth director about it, and he said, these kids pay no attention to history or lures. They go out with what they think will work, and it does. They're not fishing the past. They don't have this 20-year history on the lake, and they go out and catch fish. They don't need, and high school is going to be bigger than adults in the year 2019. There's going to be more high school members of bass than there are adult members at the nation level. So think about that for a minute.
But
Thank you.
for the most, yes.
I don't want to just chomping at the bit here, hearing TJ talk, but just to give you just a touch of memory lane. When we started this thing in 1975, we had one tournament, and there was no bass boats in the club. We were fishing out of aluminum boats, and well, we had one center console Starcraft. It was a 15-foot Starcraft. That was as close to a bass boat as we had, and I think we had 8 people fish that first tournament in October of '75. Then in '76, we started with no bass boats, and by the time the year ended, we had 3 in the club. 3 honest-to-God bass boats, and I had one of them.
Glastron.
15-foot Glastron with an 80 on it. I was one of the Go Fast boys back then. But just to see how that thing evolved, and TJ is talking about these different lures. We had 2 lures. It was called a Cordell spot and a spinnerbait. And we never knew about plastic worm fishing until his old man taught us, who was one of the founding members of the club, to fish plastic worms. But just the way the thing has evolved since the mid-'70s, it's just amazing. I mean, what we had for tackle today, you guys wouldn't burn it in a fire. I mean, this was back then. It was state of the art. But I mean, it's just the evolution of this bass stuff is just. It's amazing.
And those guys at the elite level, they're electronics whizzes. Okay. It's just unbelievable what they do, and what they see, and how they approach it. It's a science now.
I've got a collector item, and Van has a collector item. We both got Lowrance 2330s in our chest somewhere. What's that? That's a flasher that measures to 30 feet.
But that's really my story from when I started. the good, the bad, the ugly.
Keep it going.
And
What was the first tournament you won?
first tournament I ever won was in Rochesterbassmasters. That's a funny story, I'll tell you. It really is a funny story. I was 17. The previous day before was the last day of school. Okay. And so I was like jacked up. I'm going fishing, blah, blah, blah. I draw, first tournament was on Cuca Lake. And I draw this guy, Ben Wilt. I
I
don't know.
remember him.
And
Ben Wilt.
Ben Wilt.
yeah.
Great guy. If a lot of you know Noel Good, he has his old boat now. So the bag that I caught was in that boat. So anyway, draw this guy. He said, oh, he's going to run all the way around. We went out of Penyan, run all the way around to Branchport. Wanted to go all the way up Fish Tank Marina. Okay. So I'm just riding around, and I loved the morning, smelling the smoke of the engines, seeing all these guys take off. Everybody's getting jazzed up, ready to go. So we're running all the way around to Y, going all the way up to Branchport, and this guy ain't got a freaking clue what's doing. When I think about it today, at that time, I'm like, oh, we're going to catch him, we're going to catch him. And it was like 2 hours went by and we didn't catch a goddamn thing. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? I thought this guy was supposed to be somebody good. So he says, we're going to switch gears and we're going to fish smallmouth and bring any of my smallmouth stuff. Lift it all home. I had no top waters. I had no tubes. I had nothing. Nothing. Zero. So we're running down the lake. He pulls up on this point. And he says, oh, why don't you take the front of the boat? I'm going to get some stuff tied up, and we'll go from there. Okay. So at that time, I was still learning from my father and everything. And I look on the bank. There's a bunch of docks right there. Trolling motors on 100. I'm going right for those docks. So get up to the docks, and he doesn't have no clue that we even moved. I throw a slider head with a 4-inch black power worm on it. Throw it under the dock, and I'm sitting there, and I'm feeding this thing line, and I'm feeding it line, and I'm feeding it line, and I'm like, how freaking deep is this? I can't see the bottom. Like, how deep is this? So I click the bail over. Here's the line. Set the hook on that. It's 5 pounds. Huh, look at that. No shit. Get him in the boat. I'm all jacked up. I got a 5-pounder. He's got nothing. And I'm like, oh. He's like, where'd you get that? I'm like, oh, it was over there. It was over there. He's like, oh, you just stay in the front then. I'm like, perfect. Throw back under that dock again. Feeding it line. I'm like, there's no way it's this deep. There's no way. Click the bail. There goes the line. Set the hook. It's another 5 pounder. I'm like, huh, 10 pounds for fish. It's pretty good. He's like, well, why don't you go in the back and I'll take the front now. I'm like, what the? I'm like, really? So I'm jacked up. I got 2 fish, a 5.5, a 5-pounder. I'm feeling pretty good. So, I sit in the fat man's seat in the back, and I cracked a Coke. I got a sandwich sitting there. Threw the rod back under the dock. I got it sitting down. I picked my sandwich up, and here's the rod skidding across the freaking dock. Grab it. Boom. I broke it off. I broke the damn thing off. Reel it in. Tie it up. Now I'm taking bites of the sandwich, drinking the pop at the same time, tie it up, throw it back under there. Oh, there he is again. Got another one, 4.5 pounder. Smallmouth this time. So all of a sudden I look.
Where's this dock?
Do you believe every time I go back to that dock, I catch at least one good one? One good one.
Docks are like that, man.
So all of a sudden I'm sitting there and on my kids. I'd never seen nothing like it in my life. And Ben, I saw him probably 10 years ago, and he brought the same conversation up. We're sitting there, and here are these smallmouth. Now, most of the docks in Cuca Lake are wooden poles, big wooden pilings. Here are these smallmouth running into these pilings, like competing because there's bait under there. And they're crashing, splashing all over the place. You can't get a bait to them fast enough. He hooks up, I hook up. He hooks up with like a 4-pounder. I hook up with like a 5. So now I got a 5.5, I got a 5, I got a 4, I got another 5.
And they're all smallies?
2 smallmouth, 2 largemouth. I'm like, this is like, I'm beside myself. I'm like, we can go in now. I got 4. I'm good. I'm ready to go on this, so I'm good. So it kind of died. He got his 5 off it, like 14, 15 pounds. I'm still waiting for number 5, and we kept going back, but they weren't doing their thing under there. I'm pretty sure they were spawning, and there was a bunch of bluegill under there. And now that I think about it,
Right.
So we moved down into this, just past the dock, come around this point into this weed edge, and he's got the boat sideways. He's out in the deep, and I don't think he realizes it, and I'm right along the edge. And I take this 1/4-ounce slider head with a black freaking power worm, throw it out there. And I'm just like, man, dude, this is like the best day ever. This is like unbelievable, man. And all of a sudden, it's if anybody's ever thrown either the Don Wenzel rig or the Paul Caldwell rig, it's basically the same thing, but with a slider head. A 4-inch black curl tail power worm. Just throw it out, let it hit the bottom, and just drag that little son of a bitch back. So and this was way before any of their times. This was like the original thing that I used to do. Learned it from an old guy, old darer, probably one of the best fishermen around, Marty Yu. I learned it from him. And so I'm dragging this thing back, and all of a sudden it just goes donk donk. I'm like, oh, there it is, number 5. Crack! So I got him. This thing comes sailing out of the water, and it's a big smallmouth. It's a big smallmouth. I'm like, oh my God, please. So I get him to the boat, and he scoops him, throws it on the deck, and the guy just looks at him, and he goes, man. He goes, you got a bag, son. You got a bag. And I'm like, oh, unbelievable. This is unbelievable. I grab the rod like this, and I go, what the hell? The hook never went through the worm. He held on to it the whole time. The whole time. It never pierced the plastic. Ever. I grabbed this fish, and he's like, what? He goes, you never hooked that fish? I'm like, well, I set the hook on him pretty goddamn good. He goes, he must have clamped down on it so hard and didn't want it to let go of it. So I'm like, whatever. I open the door and I go, he's in here now. Slam the door. So we go back, right? And I use this against Rod Brown every single time I see him, because this is like the icing on the cake. Back in the day, we had a lot of guys from Rochester that were also members of Bullseye. Dave Livingston was, and Rod Brown was. Rod Brown was also in this tournament. And I think Rod Brown was one of the first guys to weigh in. He had like 19-something, 18-something. He was probably going to end up winning the tournament. I come in, and I got a fucking grin from ear to ear like this. And I'm 18 years old, 17 years old. I'm like, this is awesome. I had no idea how much weight I had, but I knew I had some couple of studs in there. So my dad comes walking over. He's like, how'd you do it? I'm like, dude, I smashed him. He's like, what? And Ben's like, yeah, he did. And he's like, what? I'm like, I think I got like 20 pounds. Seriously? He goes, no. It's like he's got me a bag. We're filling it with water, and I take the first one out, and it's like a 5.5. Put it in the bag, and he's like, that's a good one. Grabbed another one, and it's another 5, 5.25, and he goes, that's a good one, Jesus Christ. So I grabbed the 2 smallmouth, one's a 4, and one's like a 3 3/4, and put them in there. He goes, wow. And I'm like, that ain't the biggest one. Look at this one. And I grab it. There's one, it was 6'1".
Oh my
God. Threw it in the bag, and he goes, so I go walking up, and at the time the tournament director was Ron Williamson. He has a club in Dansville area, After Breakfast Bassmasters. He was the tournament director, so I'm in the bag line, and this was way back in the day when the area guys around like Darren Dalton and Dave Cerrone, these were sticks. These were unbelievable fishermen, and they had all weighed in and they had struggled. It was like 14, 15 was a really good bag, and Rod was leading it with like 18 3/4, almost 19 pounds. So I'm sitting there and I got my bag, right? And it's in the tank, and Ron goes like this and goes, what the? And I'm like, I don't know. So I put him up on the scale, and it said 23 3/4.
Wow.
And broke the all-time weight record for Bullseye. I had a 625, so it broke the largest fish's record. And then there's Rod Brown's dreams just shattered. And I was like, and I still bring it up to this day. I'm like, remember when I whooped your ass at Cupid out of the back of someone's boat? And he's like, man, that sucked. But it was stuff like that. That was probably the first tournament I ever won. I still have that plaque. It's up in my garage with all the rest of them, and I look at it every single day when I walk outside. Because I can't, when you walk out of my door, it's like right in your face. And the picture of me holding the fish is with them, and it's right next to the plaque, and I think about it every single day. And when my dad comes over, and this, I swear to you, he does this every time he walks in my garage. He goes like this. every time he walks in my garage. But yeah, that was one of the first.
Is that why you do work at his garage?
Yes. But that's my story, guys. I thought it would be more fun to just do that instead of saying, "Oh, I use a drop shot 18 inches or 24 inches." It gets kind of boring.
Thanks.